Elizabeth Warren is one of the leading figures in the progressive movement. I mean, this woman, she is the real freaking deal. She is the Democratic senator out of Massachusetts, and since she came into office in 2012, she has been on a tear. She has led multiple charges against those big, greedy bankers on Wall Street who have destroyed the lives of millions of Americans countless times. She led the charge against a Wall Street banker being approved for an elite position in the Department of Treasury, which is supposed to regulate Wall Street. She's made thunderous speeches against the big banks on the floor of the Senate, and Wall Street runs the place. She created the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, which gives billions of dollars back to these consumers after they've been cheated by these huge companies. I mean, she showed more balls in 2 years than any of these fools in Congress could dream of. Listen, I can talk about the achievements of this woman all day. So to make a long story short, she has been one of the only people in Washington who really fight for the interests of regular folks. So in order to introduce you all properly to who I think is the only person you should seriously consider supporting in the presidential primaries and elections, so I'm going to show you all a clip from about 18 months ago. In this video, Elizabeth Warren is on CNBC, which is a news network that goes out of their way to support Wall Street and the big banks. So Elizabeth Warren at this time, along with John McCain actually, they were both advocating for a bill they introduced which would bring back the Glass-Steagall law. Now, what is Glass-Steagall? Okay, so after the Great Depression, we obviously wanted to make sure that the financial system could not simply melt down like it did after the Great Crash of 1929. So the way you do this is to take the risk out of the system. Make sure the banks aren't playing with your money to screw up the economy. So the government decided to create a law which separates the standard banks, where you deposit your money and withdraw it. You separate the regular banks from the investment banks, where they engage in all of this risky gambling. So instead of them gambling with limitless amounts of their depositors' money, they're only betting with their own money. So it encourages the investment banks to take less risk because they have less money, which makes sense. And as I said, she's going on CNBC to defend this law she and McCain are introducing. And CNBC, I cannot stress enough how they are just a propaganda arm of the big banks. They are pathetic. I mean, they stretch as far as humanly possible, and then some to defend Wall Street. So the first anchor, they ask a simple question. Some of the banks are saying this bill will hurt their competitiveness. Now, of course, this is what the banks always say in response to regulation. So Elizabeth Warren immediately strikes that down with some good old down-home logic. And watch this dude slide into, keep the woman in check.
I will push back, though, on the relative security that you're portraying Glass-Steagall to have given us, because Continental Illinois in the early 80s was the seventh largest bank in America. It failed, almost set off basically another major banking crisis. Shouldn't we just tell the American consumer that no matter what we do, there will be bank boom and bust cycles, no matter what the laws and regulations? You can't protect everything.
No, that is just wrong.
Why?
Look at the history.
I have looked at history. We're filled with booms and busts from the Dutch tulip crisis to now.
From 1797 to 1933, the American banking system crashed about every 15 years. In 1933, we put good reforms in place for which Glass-Steagall was the centerpiece. And from 1933 to the early 1980s, that's a 50-year period, we didn't have any of that. None. We kept the system steady and secure. And it was only as we started deregulating, you start hitting the S&L crisis, and what did we do? We deregulated some more. And then you hit long-term capital management at the end of the 90s, and what did we do as a country? This country continued to deregulate more. And then we hit the big crash in 2008. You are not going to defend the proposition that regulation can never work.
I didn't say regulation never worked, Senator, by far and away. And I agree, there were fewer bank failures in that time after Glass-Steagall.
Fewer as in, of the big ones, zero.
But Continental Illinois was the seventh biggest bank in the United States when it failed.
It took 50 years to get there.
Whoops! that is what's called a classic beatdown, buddy. So he's like, well, Glass-Steagall is not as secure as you're saying it is. I mean, the 7th largest bank in the USA crashed while Glass-Steagall was in place. Looks like it's not the big bad law you're saying it is. Haha, gotcha there. And then check out her smooth response. She says, stop tripping. You already know Continental Illinois crashed after 50 years of peace and security because of this law. That's a major improvement from the economy going up and down like the wind. And the only reason Continental Illinois crashed was because Saint Reagan came into office in 1980 and began deregulating the banks. And it only took a few years of that nonsense to bring the chaos back into the fold and start the process of these banks toppling like cards. If Reagan had never started the policies of deregulation, I guarantee you there would not have been a crash like Continental Illinois for at least another decade. Believe me. But the senator is nowhere near done. Watch CNBC try to salvage what little they have left in their argument, and Elizabeth Warren shoot them down like a sniper.
Senator, you're on the record saying Glass-Steagall would not have prevented the financial crisis.
Not all by itself, that's absolutely right. But what Glass-Steagall can do is it can wind some more of the risk out of the system. It can help bring down the size of the largest banking institutions. Don't forget, you said there was too much concentration in the banking industry in 2008. Now here we are in 2013, and the Big Four are 30% bigger. That puts too much risk back in the system.
Well, there's other ways of shrinking them, obviously. But
with all due respect, Senator, every report I've read, every person I've spoken to says that there's a very, very, very slim chance of this even passing.
Well, let me put it this way. If you don't fight for it, the chances are zero. And remember who my partners are in this one. I've got John McCain standing with me. I couldn't ask for a better fighter. We've got Maria Cantwell. We've got Angus King. We've got a Democrat, a Republican, an independent.
That was pathetic. That was just pathetic. So after she educates them about the financial system for the first few moments there, then one of the anchors comes back and says, there's other ways of shrinking the banks. Like what, buddy? Like what? Name one. Oh, that's right. You can't, because you work for CNBC, which is the media wing of Wall Street. Ha ha ha. And then she gives him a little glance of pity. Like, yeah, I bet your producer is yelling in your ear right now about how I'm destroying you, but hang in there. Oh man, she is the real deal. But then at the end there, the female anchor tries to jump in and she says, this bill isn't even gonna pass anyway because my Wall Street bosses run Congress, so, you can't even escape the corruption, Elizabeth. And she says the line in response, which pretty much embodies what people like her represent. If you don't try, the chances are zero. That's right, Senator. That's right. Look, everyone loves to hail the almighty Queen Hillary as the one we should be voting for in this Democratic primary. But let's get the record straight. Hillary Clinton is a sellout. She is a corporatist. She is in Congress to represent the big companies and the rich. And as a Democrat, she can't attempt to hurt the poor. That's what people like Barack Obama, Nancy Pelosi, Harry Reid, the establishment of the Democratic Party, that's what they do. Help the rich and the big companies and step over the working and middle class. The difference between them and the Republicans is very simple. The Republicans like to stomp on the middle and working class. Elizabeth Warren is a totally different dynamic. She looks at the poor and the middle class and says, get up off your feet. Let's help you out because this is unfair. And while Elizabeth Warren has repeatedly said she's not running, she is the only candidate out there who can really challenge the establishment and work for regular folks, but also has a legitimate chance of winning. She is the real deal, man. And hopefully now you have a good idea of what she represents. Elizabeth Warren.